Hi guys, it's Catherine. So I've not posted a video for nearly a whole month, and that wasn't my intention at all, but I just got incredibly busy really quickly. I was doing my master's dissertation while also doing a full-time job, and it just gave me so little time to actually read, so I felt like I had nothing to really make videos about. But I've now finished my dissertation, and I will definitely have some more time to be able to read all the books that I'm really excited about, and then hopefully be able to talk about them with you. The next month's going to be a little bit hectic for me as well because I'm moving flat, so I imagine I'll be posting a little bit erratically, but I'll definitely still try and post videos when I can. But for today I want to talk about 4 books that I've really enjoyed reading over the last couple of months, sort of during July and August. The first one is this really tiny book. It's The Breakthrough by Daphne du Maurier. It's part of the Penguin Modern series that are just £1 and they have these really lovely designs. Now, I've not actually read any Daphne du Maurier before, quite shamefully, but this has really whetted my appetite and I definitely want to read more of her books soon, of course Rebecca being kind of the main one. This is a short psychological thriller type story, and I don't really want to talk about the plot because it is really short, just 50 pages, but the blurb says it's a scientist's attempt to solve the mystery of life after death has chilling consequences in this eerie tale from a virtuoso writer of suspense. To me, it had the atmosphere of The Woman in Black mixed with the scientific inquiry of Frankenstein, and those are 2 pretty good books, so I really enjoyed this one. It gave me an idea of the kind of flavour of her writing, and I really liked it, so I'm super excited to read more from her. The other 3 books were all library books, so I don't have them in physical copies, but the first one is The Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh, which I read just before it was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and I definitely see why it was chosen. I found it quite an odd but definitely accomplished and a very unique book. It's about 3 sisters who are brought up by their mother on an island, isolated from the rest of the world, and they're brought up to believe that the outside world, and particularly men, are lethal and they must avoid them at all costs. These beliefs are challenged when 3 men wash up on the island and the meticulously constructed ideas that the mother has built begin to slowly wash away. I found this book hard to analyse because it's quite abstract, but I think it definitely questions ideas of power within gender in a similar way to books by Margaret Atwood and also Naomi Alderman in The Power. There have been loads of really great feminist novels coming out recently, but I've definitely read very few that really interrogate the potential dangers in shifting the power dynamic from the way it is currently constructed. And this one, yeah, it did it really well. The writing in this book is beautiful. It's one of the things that stood out most to me, and I keep hearing it described as a fever dream, and I think that's a really accurate way to describe this book. There's a kind of heat haze that lies over the writing that sort of distorts everything and makes it seem slightly otherworldly in a way that's quite uncanny to read, but also so captivating. The next one is Motherhood by Sheila Heti, and I went into this book expecting it to be a novel, but it's not really. At least the way it comes across is much more autobiographical. It's written in short chunks over a period of several years that seems to quite closely mirror the experiences of the author. It's about a woman at the age of 37 who's trying to decide whether or not she wants to become a mother, and on a personal level it deals with her feelings of guilt and obligation, especially towards her partner, who she feels like wants children more than her, but also on a much more broader level it deals with the idea of motherhood itself fundamentally, and the pressures and injustices towards women who feel obliged to be mothers. There was a specific quote from this book that I really liked and I want to read it to you. It says, "I realised that throughout most of history it was enough for men that women existed to give birth to men and raise them. And if a woman gave birth to a girl, well then, with luck the girl would grow up to give birth to a man. It seemed to me like all my worrying about not being a mother came down to this history, this implication that a woman is not an end in herself. She is a means to a man who will grow up to be an end in himself and do something in the world, while a woman is a passageway through which a man might come. I've always felt like an end in myself, doesn't everyone? But perhaps my doubt that being an end in myself is enough comes from this deep lineage of women not being seen as ends, but as passageways through which a man might come. If you refuse to be a passageway, there is something wrong. You must at least try." There was another book that dealt with a similar topic that came out this year, Sight by Jessie Greengrass, which I've talked about in other videos. I really enjoyed that one, but it takes a slightly different perspective because the protagonist in that book does choose to become a mother, whereas in this book she doesn't. So it's taking this idea from different perspectives, which is really interesting. I would definitely recommend this book if it's a topic that you're interested in, although it is fairly abstract. It's not very plot heavy at all, but I would definitely say don't go into it expecting a novel, because then you probably won't be satisfied with it. Lastly is one of the best books I've read this year, and also one of the most difficult I've ever read, I think. Not in the sense that the writing itself is challenging, but just that it's so painful to read. My Absolute Darling by Gabriel Tallent came out about a year ago, but it just came out in paperback, I think last month, and I finally managed to pick it up because I have heard universal praise about it. It's about a father and daughter who live very rurally, quite isolated from their local community. The daughter is 14, she's nicknamed Turtle, and although she attends a local school, she is a bit of an outcast and she feels a great deal of contempt towards her peers. And her father is a wayward intellectual who is physically, emotionally and sexually abusive towards her. There is no sugarcoating the issues that this book deals with. They are incredibly difficult to read, but I really don't think it's torture porn in the slightest. It talks about these really tough issues very sensitively, and I think it gets to the heart of the ideas that it's trying to convey about the relationship between this father and daughter. It's particularly painful because the daughter Turtle doesn't fully understand the reality of the situation she's in, or quite how perverse it is. So seeing it from her perspective, it is obviously very tough to read. The book isn't just a case study of this relationship, however. It does have a lot of plot, a lot more than I expected actually from a book that's been classed as very literary. It's actually very readable, and the plot itself is very fast paced, particularly towards the final act where it gets exponentially faster. It really becomes much more of a thriller, page-turner type book, and it comes to really huge climaxes. Apparently this book was originally going to be about the human relationship with and their destruction of the environment, and you can really see this as a thread running throughout the book. Turtle's relationship with her natural surroundings is incredibly intimate, and it's written so beautifully actually. I think it's such a necessary counterpoint to the incredibly painful passages you read about her as well. This book makes points about self-sufficiency and our obligations to the environment. Turtle is entirely self-sufficient, and she sees this as completely the norm until she forms a friendship with a boy a similar age to her who lives in an ordinary house, and when something breaks they'll replace it rather than repair it. And she begins to see this alternate way of living and sees that her way is actually not really the norm. This was actually an incredibly beautiful book despite all the ugliness, and I think it's one that's almost universally worth reading regardless of your taste. I think obviously if you're going to be particularly negatively affected by the issues it raises, I would avoid it because it is written incredibly intensely, but otherwise I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. As I said, it's one of the most impressive books I've read this year, and I completely expect it to be one of my favourites of the year. So those are the 4 books that I have read recently and really enjoyed. I really hope to make more videos soon about maybe more specific books, either ones that are on the Man Booker long list or just ones that I've been wanting to read for a long time, because there are so many. Hopefully I'll have some more time soon to do all the reading that I want to do and actually watch other videos as well, because that's something that I've been neglecting over the last few weeks too. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it, and hopefully I will see you again in a video really shortly. Bye bye.